going to go for a little walk down memory lane. The name Israel first appeared in the Merneptah stele around 1208 BCE, discovered by Flinders Petrie in 1896. The stele is an inscription on granite written in hieroglyphs by the Egyptian king Merneptah. It also supports the biblical assertion that Israel has been in the land of Israel for over 3,200 years. What it actually says in the inscription is, Israel is laid waste, its seed is not. If you look at the name Israel, it can be broken down into 3 syllables. The name Israel is linked to the ancient Egyptian goddess Isis, the sun god Ra, and the Canaanite god El.
The Hebrews went north into Palestine. They encountered a people that were already there for thousands of years. They were called Palestinians. When they went into Palestine, they had already learned all the wisdom and the religious teachings of Isis, spelled I-S-I-S. Then they learned the new concept of the new religion of Amun-Re, R-A. And now they encountered the Palestinians, and the Palestinians' god was El, the planet Saturn, El, Consequently, the religion grew out of Isis, Ra, El, I-S-R-A-E-L. Israel is nothing more than Isis, Ra, and El. Consequently, there's nothing holy about Israel. And why is Jerusalem called the Holy City? The Holy City is because every kind of licentious, filthy, degenerate religion that can come into the mind of men has been practiced there. Everything from child sacrifice, pornography, violence, human sacrifice, I don't care how filthy it is or how dirty it is, they were doing it in Jerusalem. Anything that is truly enlightened and intelligent wouldn't have a damn thing to do with you. All you do is child sacrifice, pornography, violence, money grubbing, money changer. And I think that that's what's coming. I think there's going to come a time when we're going to start thinking in terms of, wait a minute, let's back up and look at this all over again. Who are we really, and what is astrology, and what is the Bible, and who really wrote it? And that's what I'm hoping to do, to be able to enlighten people that there's something else going on we haven't been told.
Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire from 1516 until the end of World War I in 1918. During this time, the land was divided into administrative districts, including Jerusalem, Acre, and Nablus. In 1917, Britain entered Palestine and defeated the Ottoman forces in 1918. A 2015 study by Veronica Fernandez and others included that Palestinians have a primarily indigenous origin. Palestinians, among other Levantine groups, were found to derive 81 to 87% of their ancestry from Bronze Age Levantines, relating to Canaanites as well as Kura Araxes culture. This was before 2400 BCE, 4,400 years before the present time. A 2021 study by the New York Genome Center found that the predominant component of the DNA of modern Palestinians matches that of Bronze Age Palestinian Canaanites who lived around 2500 to 1700 BCE. Theodor Herzl, born on May 2, 1860 and died on the 3rd of July 1904. In 1897, Herzl convened the First Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland, and was elected president of the Zionist organization. He began a series of diplomatic initiatives to build support for a Jewish state, appealing unsuccessfully to German Emperor Wilhelm II and Ottoman Sultan Abdulhamid II. Now, bear in mind that the founder of modern political Zionism, Theodor Herzl, was a secular thinker and freethinker. He wasn't religious and did not believe in God or Judaism. He was an atheist. His self-proclaimed mission was to find the state that God had promised the Jews. So how is it that a man who does not believe in God is going to find a state that God promised to his chosen people? At the Sixth Zionist Congress in 1903, Herzl presented the Uganda scheme, endorsed by Colonel Secretary Joseph Chamberlain, on behalf of the British government. The proposal, which was sought to create a temporary refuge for Jews in British East Africa following the Kishinev program, was met with strong opposition and ultimately rejected. In 1917, in order to win Jewish support for Britain's First World War effort, the British Balfour Declaration promised the establishment of a Jewish national home in Ottoman-controlled Palestine. However, the British had also promised Arab nationalists that a united Arab country covering most of the Arab Middle East would result if the Ottoman Turks were defeated. And when the fighting ended in 1918 with the Ottoman Empire defeated on every front, neither promise was delivered. In 1920, Britain assumed responsibility for Palestine under a League of Nations mandate, and during the next 2 decades, over 100,000 Jews entered the country. The British Army's operations in Palestine during this period were mainly directed against militant Arab groups who were opposed to this mass Jewish immigration. And violence reached a height with the Arab Revolt between 1936 and 1939. Now, the Holocaust had a major impact on the situation in Palestine, and during the Second World War, the British restricted the entry into Palestine of European Jews escaping Nazi persecution. They had imposed a limit on Jewish immigration in the summer of 1939, anxious to end the disturbances in Palestine and to secure the support of the Egyptians and oil-rich Saudis ahead of the looming conflict in Europe. This policy provoked armed Jewish resistance and eventually united those who looked to Britain for help in establishing their national homeland, the Haganah, and those who wished to use terrorism to drive the British out.
We were Zionists. We were for building a homeland.
A land without a people for a people without a land is a Jewish Zionist slogan associated with the movement to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The problem is the land that they gave them originally had people living there, and they were Palestinians, and they'd have been living there for thousands of years.
كانوا اليهود موجودين يهود حقيقيين من اليهود اللي غير متطرفين، يعني كانوا مستقيمين وكانوا يعرفوا انه انا إلي حق اني اعيش هون مثل ما إله هو حق يعيش هون.
لما اجوا هذول تبعين الغرب هن اللي خربوا الدنيا وهجرونا.
In the 1920s, thousands of Arabs became homeless after Zionists purchased the land out from underneath them. 1927 coins from the British Mandate of Palestine were minted to meet public demand starting on the 1st of November in 1927 to establish a unified currency for the region, reflecting on the diverse communities within Palestine and to reflect the unique cultural inheritance of the indigenous Semitic-speaking people of Palestine. And the Haganah it's a word in Hebrew which means the defense, and it was the main Zionist paramilitary organization that operated for the Yishuv in the British Mandate for Palestine. It was founded in 1920 to defend the Yishuv's presence in the region and was formally disbanded in 1948 when it became the core force integrated into the Israel Defense Forces shortly after the Israeli Declaration of Independence. Jewish settlement in the land of Israel was the community of Jews residing in Palestine prior to the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, and Haganah was formed out of previous existing militias. Haganah's original purpose was to defend Jewish settlements against Arab attacks. The paramilitary was under the control of the Jewish Agency, and the official governmental body in charge of Palestine's Jewish community during the British era. Until the end of World War II, Haganah's activities were moderate and in accordance with the strategic policy of Havlaga, which means self-restraint, which caused the breakaway of the more radical paramilitaries. Haganah militants received clandestine military support from Poland and sought cooperation with the United Kingdom in the event of an Axis-led invasion of Palestine through North Africa, prompting the creation of the Polmak, their elite fighting force in 1941. Following the end of World War II, The British refused to lift restrictions on Jewish immigration that they had imposed with the 1939 White Paper. This resulted in Haganah leading Jewish insurgency against the British authorities in Palestine. The campaign included paramilitaries, bombing of bridges, railways and ships used to deport illegal Jewish immigrants, as well as assisting in bringing more diaspora Jews to Palestine in defiance of British policies, which I believe was by design and part and parcel of the plan. Arab demands for independence and resistance to immigration led to the Arab Revolt in Palestine. Then we come to the Kimberley Plan, which was a failed plan by the Free Land League, to resettle Jewish refugees from Europe in northern Australia before and during the Holocaust. The Free Land League for Jewish Territorial Colonisation was formed in London in July of 1935 to search for a potential Jewish homeland and haven. The League was led by Isaac Nachman Steinberg. In May 1939, the Free Land League sent their leader, Isaac Steinberg, to survey the property. The impressive plan was that 7 million acres were to be purchased and an initial contingent of 500 workers would build basic infrastructure to support some 75,000 Jewish refugees who would follow Commonwealth laws but have full cultural autonomy and develop the region's pastoral and agricultural industries. Now with a site and plan, Steinberg just had to convince Australians of the merits of a Jewish pseudo-state. It was no short order, but Steinberg was a talented emissary. He spoke 7 languages, he had a doctorate in law and was a former member of Lenin's cabinet. A religious Jew and left-wing revolutionary, he gained wide support from the likes of the WA Premier, the chairman of the ABC and the Lord Mayor of Sydney and others. Australians' fear of Asians outweighed their wariness of Jews, and support for the proposal was further buttressed by reports of Nazi brutality. Yet there were concerns the new settlers would move from the Kimberley, attracted by the big cities. They'd take Aussie jobs and make people uncomfortable with their differences. A 1940 Bulletin magazine article calmly suggested that they'd swarm into our cities. In a letter dated 28th of October 1943, Prime Minister John Curtin delivered the verdict. The government is unable to see its way to depart from long-established policy in regard to alien settlement in Australia, and therefore cannot entertain the proposal for a group settlement of the exclusive type contemplated by the Free Land League. After 4 years of championing the cause, Isaac Steinberg left the country in 1943, taking with him the dreams of an Australian Jewish homeland. In 1947, the British turned the Palestine problem over to the UN. After the adoption of the United Nations Partition Plan for Palestine in 1947, Haganah came into the open as the biggest fighting force, successfully overcoming Arab militias. Haganah was merged with other paramilitary groups and reorganised into the official military force of the State of Israel. The Nakba, which means catastrophe in Arabic, refers to the mass displacement and dispossession of Palestinians during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The Deir Yassin massacre took place on April 9, 1948, when Zionist paramilitaries attacked the village of Deir Yassin near Jerusalem, killing at least 107 Palestinian Arab villagers, including women and children. The attack was conducted primarily by the Irgun and the Lehi, who were supported by the Haganah and the Palmach. The massacre was carried out despite the village having agreed to a non-aggression pact and was a central component of the Nakba and the 1948 Palestinian expulsion and flight. And this next account is highly disturbing.
Hand grenades were simply thrown in the houses. Women and children were killed, bodies stuffed down wells, jewelry stripped off fingers cut off, earlobes cut off.
رحت أنا ماشي بعرق الحيط مش من الشارع الرئيسي، من البساتين. الفرن له شباك على جنب لليهود في الفرن، والنسوان قعدات على الأرض وكل واحدة قاعدة وحاطة إيديها على راسها هي، وبقولوا للفران ارمي ابنك بالفرن، ارمي ابنك بالفرن، اسمه حامد. قال لهم أنا ما برمي ابني، قال له شويه. هم ضربوا الحاج حامد على راسه ومسكوا الولد رموه بالفرن. أنا شفت هالمنظر، شفت هالمنظر ما تمش فيها حيل من مرة يعني. بعدين مسكوا الأب حطوه وراه، قالوا له الحق ابنك. أنا اجيت عديت قلت هلا بيمسكوني، قمت أركض.
More than 700,000 Palestinian Arabs, about half of mandatory Palestine's predominantly Arab population, were expelled or fled from their homes, first by Zionist paramilitaries and after the establishment of Israel by its military. The expulsion and flight was a central component of the fracturing, dispossession and displacement of Palestinian society, known as the Nakba. Dozens of massacres targeting Arabs were conducted by Israeli military forces, and between 400 and 600 Palestinian villages were destroyed. Village wells were poisoned in a biological warfare program, and properties were looted to prevent Palestinian refugees from returning. Other sites were subject to Hebraization of Palestinian place names. Hebrew language names were coined for the place names of Palestine throughout different periods under the British Mandate. After the establishment of Israel following the 1948 Palestinian expulsion and flight and 1948 Arab-Israeli War, and subsequently in the Palestinian territories occupied by Israel in 1967, a 1992 study conducted 2,780 historical locations whose names were Hebraized, including 340 villages and towns, 1,000 ruins, 560 rivers, 380 springs, 198 mountains and hills, 50 caves, 28 castles and places, and 14 pools and lakes. Palestinians consider the Hebraization of place names in Palestine as part of the Palestinian Nakba. Further displacement began in 1967 during the Six-Day War, termed the Naksa, which in Arabic means the setback, which was the displacement of around 28,000 to 35,000 Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza Strip when the territories were captured by Israel in the 1967 Six-Day War. A number of Palestinian villages were destroyed by the Israeli military. On November 22, 1967, the UN Security Council passes Resolution 242, calling for Israeli withdrawal from territories occupied in the recent conflict, and for the termination of states of belligerency and respect for and acknowledgement of the sovereignty, territorial integrity and political independence of every state in the area, and the right to live in peace with secure and recognised boundaries. Another Arab-Israeli war, known variously as the Yom Kippur War, the Ramadan War, and the October War, is fought when Egypt and Syria attempt to retake the Israeli-occupied Sinai Peninsula and Golan Heights. Cold War tensions spike as the Soviet Union aids Egypt and Syria as the United States aids Israel. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries begins an oil embargo on countries that support Israel, and the price of oil skyrockets. The fighting ends after a UN-sponsored ceasefire, negotiated by the United States and Soviet Union, takes hold. Over the following years, which led to decades, multiple conferences, negotiations and agreements were made in relation to the governing of the area and over Palestinian lives, such as the Camp David Accords in 1978, the Madrid Peace Conference in 1991, the Oslo Accords in 1993, the Jericho Agreement in 1994, the Israel-Jordan Peace Treaty in 1994, the Oslo II Accord in 1995, the Camp David Summit year 2000, the Roadmap for Peace in 2003, Operation Protective Edge in 2014. In 2017, the US formally recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. In 2019, the US recognizes Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. In 2020, Trump administration launches a proposed peace plan. In 2021, tensions rise again in relation to the Israel-Hamas crisis over the possible eviction of several Palestinian families from homes on land claimed by Jewish settlers in East Jerusalem on May 6. 2022 was a deadly year in Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Israel launches a counter-terrorism operation in the West Bank in response to attacks by Palestinians against Jewish Israelis. The operation and resulting resurgence contribute to the deadliest year for both sides since 2005, an uptick in violence that only turned out to rise in 2023. On October 7, 2023, Hamas launches an unprecedented surprise attack on Israel, leading to an explosion of violence. According to the Israeli government, the attack kills approximately 1,200 people, many of them civilians. Over 200 people are also taken hostage. The attack is the deadliest in Israel's history. Hamas military leaders justify the attack by citing Israel's long-running blockade on Gaza and its occupation of Palestinian lands. Following the attack, Israel launches a deadly counter-offensive aiming to eradicate Hamas in Gaza. International bodies, including the International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice, have since issued investigations into Israeli and Hamas officials for violating international law. At present, Gaza's government media office holds the death toll to be more than 61,700, saying thousands of Palestinians are still missing under the rubble and are presumed dead. The State of Israel was founded on the extraction and massacre of the local population. Factual, historical context is omitted, and the suffering of a population as a whole is disregarded. The continual oppression, illegal occupation, and periodic killing of innocent unarmed men, women, and children is something that this population has dealt with for almost 80 years. The international community has turned a blind eye to genocide and the use of collective punishment by Israeli defense forces.